Welcome to Violin Adventures number 229. We continue work on our 1700s Gagliano Cello. Okay, I'm going to work on shaping this, getting the little lump out, and then we'll form the top to this. Okay, I'm going to leave that for at least a day, maybe a couple days, and just let it relax into the new shape. Okay, let's see how these did. Okay, I've given the top some time to relax, and it looks like the form is going to be fine. So I've gone to the wood room, and I have here a very nice a piece of wood for a violin top. What makes this really good for this is an older piece it's a good age, and then the grain is really similar to the grain that's on this cello. So I'm going to try to match that, and we're going to cut out a piece. Also, this is big enough to cover this area that we want to support. So I'm going to get busy and start fitting a patch, and may take a few hours, so we'll see how long it takes. Okay, it's definitely time for a little break here. I'm fitting the patch by pressing into the form that I want it to be. I don't know if you can see the shape of the patch. There it is. We've got a nice big patch in there, but of course I'm going to take that all down and blend it into the top. Now on to our 1800's violin. Time to take off the clamps. and shape the bass bar. All right, we're going to take down these cleats and get them down as small as we can. That has much better tone now. Let's get a sealer coat on these, get our label in, and close this beautiful old instrument up. And let's see if we can get it to sing again. sounds good. The next thing to do now is to get the neck on. Happy to announce I've got the neck ready to be glued in. So we've got our hot glue and we'll get this in. This really is a handsome violin. So it's so nice to get it back together. Time for a story. We're continuing our reading about Paganini in Violins and Violinists by Franz Varga, and we're starting at page 164. There is now another gap of 4 years in Paganini's career. There are even pictures showing him in a prison cell, and it is said that he acquired his incredible skill on the G string through tireless practice in jail. As a matter of fact, Paganini was probably frequently ill during those years and could not play publicly. He was suffering from a nervous disease which kept him bedridden for months on end. He then moved to the country to convalesce. His post as leader of the court orchestra at Florence was being kept open for him all this time, but he forfeited it himself. Elisa Bonaparte had appointed him captain at Lucca. This gave him the right to wear a pompous uniform. When he reappeared in Florence, he thought it a good idea to wear the uniform again at a court concert. The Grand Duchess was rather annoyed at this and ordered Paganini to change at once into a black court uniform. Paganini refused, replying that he was wearing a captain's uniform by rights, and topped his audacity by appearing in it in the ballroom after the concert. Suddenly he began to feel rather uneasy about the wisdom of his conduct. He took the night mail coach to Milan and remained there, although the Grand Duchess did all she could to get him back to Florence. In Milan, he composed his famous Witches' Dance Variations on a theme by Sussmayer. This composition was later admired all over Europe. During the 12 years that followed, Paganini toured all over Italy. There was no major town in which he did not play, and as a rule there was such a rash for seats that he had to give 5 or 6 concerts consecutively. At Venice in 1824, he met the singer Antonia Bianchi, who was to be his companion for a number of years. Antonia bore him a son, Accolo, who was born in Palermo in 1825. Paganini was introduced to Metternich at a concert. Metternich invited him to play in Vienna, and Paganini accepted. But he had to wait until March 1828 before he could actually go to Vienna, accompanied by his wife and little Accolo. With this journey, his worldwide fame began. He arrived in Vienna March 16, 1828. The newspapers had been printing stories about this wonder violinist for several years. Reports of travelers who had heard him in Italy. The expectations of the music-loving people of Vienna could not have been higher. The concerts were to be held in the Imperial Ballroom at prices 5 times higher than usual. The cheapest seat cost 5 gulden, and Viennese humor at once rechristened the 5 gulden notes to Paganiners. The evening of March 29, the enormous hall was filled to capacity. The takings were 12,000 gulden. An orchestra composed of the best musicians in Vienna began the concert with a Fidela overture. After a short interval, there was an introduction, a stormy allegro maestoso, which eventually calmed down. Then, silently, Paganini walked onto the stage, tall, emaciated, looking like a skeleton, with his oblong, deadly pale face, eagle's beak of a nose, his glittering eyes, and his long hair flowing down to his shoulders. When he made his bow, it seemed as though his loose limbs were about to detach themselves from his body. But the audience did not have time to laugh at this fantastic figure. He put the bow to his instrument, his left shoulder and right foot pushed forward so that the lean body looked like a triangle, and then the first notes, bold and fiery, sang through the hall. At once the spell began to work. Was this really the music of a violin? Had anyone ever really heard a violin played before this moment? What grandeur in those slurred notes, what absolute purity. The bow seemed to be unnaturally long, and the player made it hit the strings like a whip. Octaval runs and tense passages alternated with incredible rapidity. Multi-stop roulades followed, every note full and clear like shining pearls on a string. Then arpeggios, executed with only half the bow, yet as powerful as though played on a giant harp. Then racing runs of semi-quavers, and the first note played pizzicata, the second bowed, sparkling like cascades of silver. The audience almost stopped breathing. There came roulades of double-stop harmonic notes and a long run across 4 octaves, playing staccato in a single stroke of a bow. Then came a noble, moving theme which sounded as though a human voice was singing. And in between these feats, the maestro's bony fingers could be seen adjusting the pegs in a fraction of a second, tuning the strings up or down to increase the effect of some bravado passage. All this gave the impression of a jet of flame pouring out over the entire concert hall, outshining by far anything ever heard from any virtuoso's violin. This was the first movement of a concerto composed by Paganini. The orchestral score was set in E-flat major, but the violin, tuned up by half a note, played in a radiating D major. And that's where we're going to stop, in the middle of his concert here, and we'll take up next week. The Hebrew Minute. Yamin Hashem Rumimah. Yamin Hashem Osa Chayil. The right hand of Hashem, or the Lord, is exalted. The right hand of Hashem, or the Lord, does valiantly. If you know where this is found, please leave it in the comments below. Here it is, a beautiful Friday. Today the weather is just pleasant and the leaves are just starting to come out. Let's go in and see what's going on in the shop. First up here we have our Gagliano Cello. We're letting the patch here dry, and then we'll take the patch down and blend it with the top and see how it turned out next week. And here's our 1800's violin. Same thing here. We want to see how this is going to sound, so we'll get it set up next week. And here's our new violin, still taking an extended vacation. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for all your wonderful comments. Thank you for your thumbs up. And thank you to the new subscribers. And until next time, bye.